Hey folks, hope you're okay. Welcome back to another Training Tip Tuesday. It's me, Andy Chadwick, and I've got another great episode for you this week. Now, we're going to be looking at the Nordic Hamstring Curls. And the reason why we're looking at Nordic Hamstring Curl is we don't have any equipment at the minute, so we've got to try and make sure that we're doing stuff that we can to strengthen all areas of the body. Now, the hamstrings are going to be a very difficult area to target if we don't have equipment. So this is a great variation that you're going to be able to use. Certainly if you're someone who needs to strengthen up your hamstrings, protect yourself from injury or muscle loss, certainly in the back of the legs, protect the hamstrings, protect the glutes, protect the hips, and make sure that we're staying nice and strong. So the Nordic Hamstring Curl is going to be a great exercise for you. So we're going to get into it. I'm going to talk you through the muscles and the movements that we're going to be using, how to perform the exercise correctly, rep ranges to start with, and common faults that we see that we want you to be aware of so you can perform the movement correctly. Okay, so we're going to get going into it straight from the off. Now, the first thing we've got to talk about is the movements that we're going to be performing with this exercise. So we're actually only looking at knee flexion. Okay, so the only movement we're going to be performing is knee flexion. So when we get into position, knee flexion is simply with the lower body or the lower portion of the leg being static, the knee is going to be allowed to move forward and then coming back. So we're just looking at that knee flexion portion as we come down and as we come back up. Okay, now the next thing we've got to look at is the muscles that are being used. Primarily we are targeting the hamstrings. Hamstrings can be targeted from hip extension, but they can also be targeted from knee flexion as well. So we're targeting more from the knee flexion side of things. Now, because we're going to be in an upright position from the hips up, we're actually going to be targeting a lot of the hamstrings towards the top end. Okay, so the lower portion of the hamstrings, more from the knee, they're probably going to get targeted more when we're doing, say, a curl on the machine, whereas this we're going to allow a little more towards the top end of the hamstrings to be targeted. Okay, so we're looking at knee flexion. Primarily the hamstrings are going to be the muscle that we're targeting, but we also are going to get some work from the calves or the gastrocnemius, simply because the hamstrings cross the knee joint underneath, but the gastroc or the calf crosses the knee joint at the top. Okay, so we're going to get some activation from the calf as we're performing this movement as well. The reason why this is such a great exercise for you to be doing in terms of strengthening the hamstrings is because we're loading up on the eccentric portion of the movement. Now, the eccentric portion of any movement is able to handle more load and more weight than the concentric portion without failure or breaking down of the movement. So if we're looking at overloading a muscle group or a movement, we can load up and perform more weight on the eccentric portion than the concentric portion. So this is a great variation for you to be doing if you want to or need to strengthen your hamstrings. Okay, so in terms of how to perform the Nordic Hamstring Curl, I'm going to be using the bed, but if you've got a bar that's heavy enough, if you've got a partner or someone that can hold your ankles and make sure that you're staying kind of grounded to the floor in the lower body, it's going to be a great way that you can use them to perform this exercise. Okay, some people have racks and stuff that they can set up and have the bar set up that they can put their feet underneath and then perform the movement effectively. So what we're doing here is I'm taking my ankles underneath and feet and heels connected to the bed. Okay, I'm going to pull my belly button towards my back and I'm going to hold everything locked in place. As soon as I do this, I can feel that my hamstrings have got some tension. Now, we're not going to get much tension until we start the movement here. Okay, so we've got to be able to feel that the movement is in the hamstrings. As soon as we start to move forward, the tension is there in the back of the legs. Okay, so pull the belly button in towards the spine. Everything from the knee to the hip to the shoulders stays relatively in line. And I'm going to talk through one of the common faults that we'll see so you'll understand what I'm talking about in a moment. So pull the belly button in. It naturally engages the hamstrings a little bit here. From here, nice and controlled, we're going to lower down, try and keep the tension in the hamstrings as much as you can, and then catch yourself as you come to the floor. Again, my heels or just below my ankles, it kind of connected to the bed. I'm pulling that belly button in and I'm going to slowly lower myself down, catching when my hamstrings have completed their movement. If they can't handle any more load, they're going to fail, they're going to let go, and you're going to have to catch yourself, okay? Now, we don't want to have our hands out to kind of catch ourselves prematurely. We want to make sure that we can get as much as we can done out of the hamstrings before we catch ourselves. So again, pull the belly button in, hold everything in, keep the tension in the hamstrings from the beginning, feel that tension come in, lower down as slow as you can, and then catch yourself at the bottom. One final one, pull the belly button in, hold the tension, feel the hamstrings working, lower down nice and controlled, catch yourself, and then reset. Now it is possible for people to go all the way down and come all the way back up. It's a very advanced position. Certainly after doing it for a very long time, you're going to have very strong hamstrings that you can then bring yourself back up. It's always something to be working up towards, and it's going to show a massive kind of progression if you can get to that point where you can lower yourself down and bring yourself back up. In terms of rep ranges for this exercise, you aren't going to need to do many to begin with. So if you haven't done this before, I'd recommend maybe doing 3 or 4 reps, maybe 5 reps, 3 sets, and you're going to feel your hamstrings. The delayed onset of muscle soreness is going to be huge in the hamstrings, okay? So we're going to want to make sure that we start off relatively light, then we can build up and progress rep by rep by rep, set by set, and then potentially even coming on the concentric as well, so bring ourselves back up. Now, in terms of common faults that we see, there are a few that we always look at. The first one is, I mentioned it a minute ago, making sure that the hands aren't catching ourselves too early. We want to make sure that we're allowing the hamstrings to do as much work as we can on the way down before we catch ourselves. So we're holding the tension in the hamstrings as long as possible before we kind of fail and before we have to catch ourselves. The next thing that we always look at is people tend to fail early, okay? So again, kind of having the hands out, it's a movement where, because we're going to be falling forwards, essentially it's a controlled fall, being scared can come into it, and the little uncertainty of what's going to happen can overturn the kind of movement itself. So when we're going forward, as soon as you've got that tension, try and resist the movement as much as you can, and then catch yourself when you need to, okay? It's having that assurance that you are going to be able to catch yourself, and it's going to be okay when you get to the bottom, because you are catching yourself and you're getting the best out of your hamstrings that you can. The final one, and it's probably the most important one here, obviously catching yourself is important because we don't want any injuries, but when we're in position, a lot of people won't flex from the knees, they'll flex from the hips. And what we're looking at here is, as people get the tension, they'll catch themselves and they'll feel their hamstrings, and it's quite an intense feeling when you first start. You'll catch yourself, and then all of a sudden people will flex at the hips and they'll come forward and they'll be in this position, okay? The tension is no longer in the hamstrings as soon as we start flexing at the hips here. Now this is quite an exaggerated position, but it can be the case that people will get the tension and then feel like they're still doing their hamstrings when they're in here, okay? We want to make sure that we're holding the belly button towards the spine and we're flexing from the knees rather than the hips, okay? So we should be catching ourselves relatively in that straight kind of pillar position from knees to shoulders, okay? That's the main thing that we want to look at here, that we've got that nice straight line from shoulders to hips down to the knees. From there, we can hold that position, keep the tension in the hamstrings, lower ourselves down controlled, catch ourselves, bring ourselves back to the top, reset, go again. Right folks, that is this week's Training Tip Tuesday. That's hamstrings, Nordic hamstring curls. Start implementing this while you're at home, when you get back into the gym, and you're going to find that your hamstrings not only get stronger, you're going to prevent a lot of injuries, a lot of back problems are going to be kind of negated because you've got strong hamstrings, and you're going to move a lot freer and be a lot stronger. If you're an athlete that does any sprinting or any kind of change of direction work, you know that hamstring strength and hamstring flexibility and mobility is key to be able to put power down, but also stay healthy and stay mobile. So general population, we still need strong hamstrings as well, and mobile hamstrings. If we're doing a lot of sitting, the hamstrings can get locked in a long position, they may get tight, and all of a sudden we're getting like the hips being pulled around, the lower back being pulled around, and it's just going to cause potential issues that we want to try and avoid. So that's this week's Training Tip Tuesday, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something from it. We've literally looked at how to work the hamstrings without any equipment. Just a little bit of a side note here, that if you do want to perform this movement with some assistance, you can grab yourself a partner who could help you. The other thing you can do is grab a band, or if you've got, say, a lat pull down, you can use the bar or the cable of a lat pull down or a band, attach it above and behind and lower yourself down nice and controlled. But that may be a video that we need to do separate, that you can then see how to do that, okay? Folks, thank you very much for checking the video out. I've done it on Instagram Live as well, so they can see it on Instagram. If you want to check out more videos in our series, our Training Tip Tuesday series, go ahead and check it out on YouTube, and I will make sure that I keep producing this content while we're in this difficult time for you to be able to learn how to put something into your workout program that is going to help you get better, understand how to do the movements, and take it forward from there, that you've got the best chance of doing the best you can in the gym and also out the gym as well. Folks, thank you very much for checking the video out. I'll see you all next week for another Training Tip Tuesday. Peace out.